get by. It resides between my eyes. Walked through the fire, came out better on the other side. See, life's like a beach if you find the sand. And right now, I feel like 100 grand.
You are listening to Inspired Insider with your host, Dr. Jeremy Wise.
Dr. Jeremy Weiss here, founder of InspiredInsider.com, where I talk with inspirational entrepreneurs and leaders. Today is no different. I have Ed Goss, 10,000footview.com. You can check him out. Ed, before I formally introduce you, I always like to point out other episodes of the podcast people should check out. Since this is part of the Top Agency series, there was a really good episode I did with Todd Taskey. Todd Taskey helps pair agency owners with private equity, helps sell agencies. He's got the Second Bite podcast. He's got some great episodes. He talks about Second Bite podcast because sometimes when they sell the private equity, the agency owner makes more on the second bite when the private equity company sells again than they did on the first sometimes as well. There was another great interview I did with Duncan Alney. He basically does social media marketing for food and beverage companies. So we'll talk a little bit about services and niche with Ed today, and Duncan has a great, you can check him out at Firebelly Marketing. Another good one, fan favorite, was Adee Clevitt. Adee Clevitt is an agency that helps people create SOPs. So she's an easy button for a company to create SOPs. So to smooth out the client onboarding, the staff onboarding, anything that needs to be documented, getting outside their head to help systematize the business. So we talked about our favorite productivity tools and softwares on that episode. You can check out that and more on InspiredInsider.com. And this episode is brought to you by Rise25. Rise25, we help businesses give to and connect to their dream relationships and partnerships. How do we do that? We do that by helping you run your podcast. We're an easy button for a company to launch and run a podcast. We do the strategy, the accountability, and the full execution. So Ed, we call ourselves the magic elves that run in the background that make it look easy for the hosts so they can create amazing content, create amazing relationships, most importantly, run their business. You know, for me, the number one thing in my life is relationships. I always look for ways to give to my best relationships, and I found no better way over the past decade to profile the people and companies I most admire and share with the world what they're working on. So if you thought about podcasting, you should. If you have questions, you can go to rise25.com or email us at support@rise25.com. I actually have a lot of free episodes on Inspired Insider. If you search podcast, we probably answer almost every question we've gotten on there. So check that out. I'm excited to introduce Ed Goss. Over the past 12 years, he's grown 10,000 Foot View from zero to a seven-figure agency with virtually no investment. And 10,000 Foot View is a search marketing agency headquartered in Toronto. They focus on paid search marketing and other campaigns that generate high bottom of the funnel conversion rates. And I'm excited to dig in. Ed, thanks for joining me.
Hey, thank you. Thank you very much.
Just start us off, and if you are listening to the audio, there's a video. I'm going to pull up the website. Tell people about 10,000 Foot View a little bit more and what you do.
Yeah, so 10,000 Foot View is, as you mentioned, a search marketing company. We're very heavy into Google Ads. We do about 70% of our business is in that platform. And, you talked a little bit about niching earlier, and I know that's kind of where the industry is going. And there's two ways to niche, really. You can niche on industry, or you can niche on service. And we really chose to go the service route. We used to actually provide a bigger basket of services, including SEO and some other stuff. But, after COVID, I kind of decided, we're going to have to follow suit with this niching thing. But I didn't want to go industry, because if you pick the wrong industry and there's a downturn in that industry, it can really impact your bottom line. And so that's kind of what we focused on, is really becoming a Google Ads shop. But, along the way, we still do Microsoft Ads and Meta Ads as well.
Talk about the decision to cut out services, because that could be a painful thing, especially if you have clients on it. I'm sure you did.
Yeah.
And you have to basically say, hey, we can't do this for you anymore. Talk about how that came about and in that conversation in your head, and then the conversation you had with your clients.
Yeah, so it wasn't as hard as that. We were already seeing a decline in SEO because it wasn't really a core focus for us. Like, this is going back to maybe 2021. And so, we had a handful of clients still on it, and we did essentially a soft shutdown of that. So we didn't really, discontinue the service for existing clients. We just pulled it as a new service offering. And then over time, those clients naturally dropped off. So I think we still do have two clients on SEO, and we're happy to provide that. But, not forever, right? So maybe another year or two, if they're still doing it, we'll refer them out to, comparable service provider.
How did you get into Google ads and paid ads in the first place?
Yeah, so my background's in the medical devices space, and I worked for a whole bunch of startups here in Toronto for most of my career. And then the last couple of roles I was in, kind of online was becoming more of a thing. Even though medical devices as a marketing business is really behind the times, and it's all just still trade shows. But online was becoming more prevalent and important. And so in my roles in sales and marketing, I started being more hands-on with SEO and with pay-per-click. And that really opened my eyes to Google Ads in particular. And that was my aha moment to kind of transition out of another startup, which I was about to be downsized in, and do something else. So yeah, effectively got downsized, I think December 24th. It was literally Christmas Eve, 2012, and January 1st, 2013, up went my website. And yeah, so that's how I got started. So I had, a little bit of hands-on experience with Google Ads, but I was by no means an expert and had no agency experience. So, it was just freelancing for the first couple of years to build up a client base. But to my credit, I will say, like, I got a client the first month, and the agency has been profitable every single month of its existence. So I didn't exactly light it up in terms of paying myself for the first couple of years, but by year three, things were going really well.
Yeah, I don't know if that's the best way to celebrate Christmas, but it turned out for the best, I guess.
Yeah.
Talk about the decision at that point, because you could have gone out. It sounds like you were successful with some of the medical
Mhm.
device companies. You could have brought your skill set and be like, hey, I figured out this way to gain more customers, clients. Why strike out on your own at that point?
Yeah, I mean, it was something that was in the back of my mind for a number of years. One of the reason I was in startups is, I'm an entrepreneur and kind of like the aspect of growing a business from nothing. And I got downsized 8 times over about, 18 years, and that's enough. And I think you get to a point where you just have a stronger belief in yourself than you do in the CEOs that you previously worked for. And so that was it. And, also being, in my 40s, I kind of had a nest egg saved up at that point. So it was not as difficult as, say, doing when, you're 25 years old. So those things just kind of lined up. And yeah, I just figured I'd go for it.
What was your
The other nice thing
mindset?
about starting an agency is there's no overhead, right? Or no to little overhead. So it wasn't like I had to pony up $1 million to start the business.
What was your mindset at that point? What did the family life look like? Because I know there's factors in there. Okay, I'm going to start this up. Were you like, okay, I'm going to do this for 6 months, and if it doesn't work, I'm going to do something. Like, what was your mindset at the time when you were starting it?
Yeah, so I didn't really have a timeline in mind, and nor did I have a family, so that made things a lot easier. I was just looking out for myself. I think I had a girlfriend at that time, but we weren't cohabitating or anything like that. So, I wasn't really responsible for her to that level anyway. So that made it a lot easier that, being a single, and also, I mean, just free time, right? Not having the family life, because that obviously requires quite a commitment as well. So that made it quite a bit easier.
So you're like, I'm just going to go for it. I'm not going to stop until I make this thing successful. That's what you're.
I don't know. I don't know if I would have never stopped. Would have been a point when, I think if I got 8 months in and I had landed a client, yeah, I'd be probably looking for another job by then. But yeah, I mean, just, things went fairly well in terms of, within the first 6 months, I had, I think, 5 or 6 clients.
How did
I
you get
wasn't,
your initial clients?
Yeah, so the first one ever came in through business networking. So I joined a couple of local groups, just where you meet up and you do a little spiel in front of a bunch of people about kind of what you do, and they're small business owners, so it's kind of a natural place to sell marketing services. And the first lady I worked with was in real estate lending. Worked for a large company, but as an independent broker. I did a website for her, and we did SEO, and we did some pay-per-click. I mentioned earlier doing a bigger basket of services. That's invariably where everybody that gets into marketing, they start when they're doing freelancing is that, yeah, I can do email marketing for you, right? Yeah, I can do your groceries and paint your house too, right? Like whatever you need to do to
Exactly.
get that, to secure that business. But that was kind of client number one. And I think we worked together for about 6 months. She didn't have a lot of budget. Um, but then I started getting a lot of clients from Elancer and Odesk, which merged eventually and became Upwork, which we know today. And I'd say, over the first kind of 2 years, that's where most of my clients ended up coming from. I priced myself out of that channel like year three, year four. It just got to a point where, we're charging a good buck now. And obviously, having other people work for me, the margins, you need to be charging more money. So,
I do want to
uh,
get into that piece. So I get the kind of the evolution of the services. You start off doing everything, SEO, website, we do email marketing, we do PPC. Over time, you kind of just narrowed the service. You kept
mhm.
the industry open, but really narrowed the service to PPC. Early
Right.
on, charging. Again, you just start the agency. How do you decide how to do the pricing for these initial?
Yeah, so I think the first year, it was competitive intelligence through web browsing. So it's literally going to other websites to see what those offers are. And
What were you
I'd say
seeing?
now, sorry.
What were you seeing at the time? What were people charging,
Oh,
for?
the more established agencies were like minimum $500, I think, to do pay per click, right?
That's
One,
it. 500 a
yeah,
month.
500. Yeah, and there's still, so we still have entry level pricing at $500. At that time, I think I was like might have been 250. This is 13 years ago, right? So it's a little while ago. Um, but yeah, it wasn't a lot, and we still have our entry level pricing still $500. That's gone up every couple of years since the beginning. Um, but that's for a client spending a very little amount of money on pay per click. And the truth is, a lot of those clients that come in, most advertisers, they want to grow their business, so they come in at 500, and in 18 months they're spending a couple thousand with us, right? Because we've been able to grow their account.
I've heard, from, and we don't do paid ads or anything like that. I'm not an
Mhm.
expert or anything, but I've heard various um, pricing options. Like some people just do flat, some people do a flat plus a percentage of the spend, because obviously if someone's spending more, it takes more time. What's your philosophy on that?
Yeah. So we're percentage based, and then we have a tiered based approach. So as you spend more, the percentage we charge on the incremental amount of ad spend goes down, right? So somebody spending 50,000 a month on Google, they're going to pay us a lower percentage overall than somebody that's spending, say, $5,000. And there's I mean, a few different aspects there. One is just recognizing that, we don't do twice as much work because there's twice as much ad spend. There is more work because there's more opportunity to build, a variety of different campaigns, and you're going to be in the account more often when you're spending more money because there's more data to look at to optimize around. But certainly, yeah, it's not linear. And then the other piece is obviously we want to obtain and retain bigger clients, right? Because obviously it's a bigger profit center for us. Um, but I do think that model really does align. It's a value-based approach, or as good as we get with that, or approximating that. I'm not a big fan of hourly because usually those agencies either get restricted by the client saying like, I cannot afford to pay you more than 20 hours a month or whatever the case may be. That's bad for business because that means there may be opportunities in the account that are not being addressed. Or conversely, if the agency is given a free hand, often they will set up their agency to do a lot of busy work, right? So no automation, basically doing everything manually, a lot of complexity, inefficiency. That's not really good for the client either. But with a value-based model, we need to be good and efficient. So we spend a lot of effort doing, you mentioned SOPs earlier, developing and maintaining our SOPs and best practices, and using things like AI strategically where it makes sense to, obviously reduce our workload on accounts.
Ed, I'm curious, who you learned from over the years, if there's any specific resources or mentors. It could be like personal mentors or distant mentors
Yeah.
when it comes to agency or marketing.
Yeah, so for a lot of years, I just mostly figured it out on my own, right? Finding online resources like YouTube videos, Google's own learnings. Um, there is Isaac Rudansky's course, which I learned a lot from, like on the technical side for Google Ads. And that course became badly out of date, but he's recently revamped it. So that was a great course, but say more recently over the last couple of years, there's Ed Leak. He has Agency Forge, and that's really more designed for agency owners to help structure their business, to figure out how to, create effective offers. I wish I had signed up for that. I wish it existed in the beginning, or maybe like in year 2, 3, as I was starting to, look at hiring people. It did not. So I was pretty far ahead of the curve when I started using that. But I'd say for anybody else that's like kind of year 2 or 3 in their agency, it's a great resource.
I noticed too on your website you have something about Mike Rhodes. This seems like way
Yep.
above my pay grade from like a technical perspective, but Mike Rhodes PMAX script reminded me because I had an interview the other day with David Baton, who runs a SaaS company called Doorloop, and he said that one of his breakthroughs with, I think they just raised $130 million and have 200 staff, was actually Google Ads and learning from Perry Marshall. And I remember hearing from Perry Marshall about Mike Rhodes. So what is this Mike Rhodes PMAX script here?
A real splash, I guess, over the last year or so. I'm going to be a little fuzzy on dates because we only started using the script ourselves a couple months ago.
Yeah.
But Google has this campaign called Performance Max, this campaign type that they launched a couple of years ago. Anybody in the industry will tell you it's really a black box that your inputs are a bunch of creative and some audience targeting, and then Google decides everything behind the scenes in terms of what keywords to target and what different platforms, because it's going to run on video, display, search, shopping. It's kind of an all-in-one solution. So it's been a real challenge for agencies to offer value in terms of an optimization service when once you set it up, it's not set it and forget it, but it approaches that. That's kind of the idea. So what Mike has done is he's created a Google script that generates a lot of data output that you cannot otherwise see directly in the Google Ads interface. So this kind of unlocks the ability to analyze what's going on in the campaign and optimize it much better than you can without the tool.
That's cool. Yeah.
Yeah, he says that something like thousands of agencies have downloaded this. So I think he will end this a very rich man from the looks of it.
Is it a software like people pay per month for it, or
So it's a one-time fee, and
monthly?
the agencies pay 500 US. I think that's right, and individual advertisers, I think it's 200. So it is surprising that it's a one-time cost. But I think part of this is the industry changes so fast. Like Performance Max may not be a thing in 2 years, right? So I think people may be hesitant to get on a subscription. But yeah, it's a great tool. It does have limitations, but if you read that article, you'll see like it does offer a lot of utility, but some things are just kind of not that helpful.
Nice. No, I appreciate you sharing that. It's super interesting. I know he's been in the game for many, many years.
Hmm.
I heard about him from Perry Marshall, I don't know how long ago, a decade or so ago.
Hmm.
Talk about the hiring journey a little bit, right? First, it's you.
Yep.
It's, you're meeting business networking groups, you're on Elance, Odesk. Talk about some of the first key hires you put in place.
Yeah, so I don't want to say we're unique, but we're a little different in philosophy. So as of right now, we only work with freelancers. So what I've done is gone out and found pay-per-click experts that have, quite a few years under their belt, and they are in the process of starting their own freelancing practice or agency. And I'm catching them at a stage where they're going to benefit from essentially, I don't want to say white labeling, but working for my agency, right, to provide services to my client. And so we do income splitting with them effectively. So they're going to share in whatever revenue we generate with the client. So instead of an employee where they're getting essentially their paycheck, maybe they're getting a bonus, but they're happy if a few clients they don't like leave because it's less work and less hassle. A freelancer working for me is incentivized to grow the client account and to take on as many clients as reasonably possible. So it kind of flips things on its head. It's a kill what you eat type of situation. For the clients, the benefits are that you develop a personal relationship with your pay-per-click manager. And if you're with a big agency, that tends to change every quarter, every 6 months, every year. Um, with us, it's like a multiple year cycle, if ever, right? So we have, most of my people have been with me longer than 5 years. And so they've been on accounts for multiple years at this point. So that's really good. Now you can't say things get stale, but we have ways to deal with that in terms of, cross auditing and that kind of thing. But, there's something to be said for that type of relationship. The downside of working directly with a freelancer is they tend not to have SOPs. It's more seat of the pants. If they go to Nepal for 4 weeks, you're not going to be able to get a hold of them. There are these issues. So putting an agency support system around that, so that, we have those standard procedures. We have somebody to back them up. We have, these internal audits so that, we're finding mistakes and fixing those before they become a real problem. So it's kind of marrying those two things, and delivering all of those benefits to our clients. So, but right now we're kind of 7 people. It's me. There's 5 pay-per-click managers. Again, they're all freelancers. Most are located in the U.S. And I have one admin assistant. So we are finally in the process of hiring the first full-time staff member. And that person will be like a pay-per-click lead role that will kind of take over my day-to-day operational responsibilities, to deal both with our pay-per-click managers and to deal with the clients.
Talk about that for a second, Ed. Kind of the structure a little bit with the clients. So, are you, how do the meetings work? Are you meeting with them, in the beginning, what the onboarding looks like, then after that, how does it work?
Yeah, so I'm the salesman. So, upfront discovery meetings and onboarding is with me, but there's a transition once a client or a prospect turns into a client, decides to work with us, they fill in our registration form. Now, before that process, if we do an audit, like a free audit for a prospect, then typically I try to get the pay-per-click manager to be lining up to actually do that work. So they're already familiar with the account. But either way, once the client is signed up, that's when everything kind of launches into. We set up a kickoff meeting with the pay-per-click manager. They start doing a competitive research, reviewing the audit, looking through the account, doing a kickoff meeting. And then parallel with that, at this point, it's me handling kind of like the back office stuff, right? And my admin assistant. But the idea is that, the pay-per-click manager is client facing. They're the main contact. So on an ongoing basis, they're the one doing all the reporting, monthly meetings. Up front, there's obviously more frequent meetings. But I check in with clients and I do like a check in with the pay-per-click managers, and we go through every account every month to see where we're at. Because, again, there's ideas that I may bring to the table for strategy or what have you. If there are issues, raised by the client or by the pay-per-click manager, it's something I can assist with.
How do you structure the monthly meetings?
Yeah, so we send a report typically within the first few days of month end. And then, the meeting tends to be ad hoc. It kind of depends on the client. We have clients that just don't want to meet. So literally, we send them a report, they read it or they don't read it. And they, say, no meeting this month kind of thing. So, it really depends on what the client wants to talk about, but we obviously will raise any issues we see with the campaigns, performance wise, and we'll also identify opportunities for growth, right? Say, hey, we really recommend we try this campaign type, or, hey, you're really, doing well in this geographic area, so we'd like to invest more money there. But yeah, it's we're a little bit loose in that regard.
I love hearing just people of a variety of ways of doing things, as far as meetings, as far as communication. So thanks for sharing that. Diesel laptops.
Mhm.
Talk about them for a second.
Yeah, so Diesel Laptops is one of our early clients. I ran into Tyler, who's the owner of the business, on Reddit. And at that time, he was literally moving out of his garage. Um, he's got a pretty big business now. I mean, it's a small business, but quite a few employees. And so what they do is it's diagnostic equipment for diesel trucks, for off-highway equipment, and they have a marine division as well. And yeah, so he was running some shopping campaigns himself at the time. We connected and, I took over his account. This is my own account. This is one that I still manage to this day, and grew it from there. And, I know I'm not single-handedly responsible for his growth because he's a great marketing team and amazing products, but he's the leader now in his industry in the US. And, I like to think that I contributed something to that.
Was that strictly Google ads or were there other platforms?
So we do Google ads, Microsoft ads, Facebook ads, for him. Yeah.
What are some of the big mistakes people make? I know you've probably audited a lot of your
Mhm.
clients' accounts before you even took them on. Talk about
Yep.
some big mistakes.
Yeah, so I mean, I'll kind of talk about what we see recently, like over the last couple of years with the advent of automation, in particular automated bidding. There's a lot of people that just kind of refuse to go with the flow, and they're still trying to do things the manual way. So that's a big issue. Just, people are using manual bidding when they're not leveraging this automated approach. And a lot of times they'll come to us and they'll say, hey, we used to do great numbers with Google Ads. We're spending 20,000 a month. But, over the last couple of years, our conversions have gone down by 80%. We don't understand it. It's like, well, have you changed anything in your business? No. Okay, well, so first off, Google is 10% more expensive every year, on average. So, you're going to be losing if you're not gaining. But, not adopting the newer automated opportunities, that's a big thing. Or just doing it wrong, right? So you'll have, advertisers that they're spending $1,000 a month, say, and they get three conversions. Like say they're doing lead generation, they get three conversions a month, and they try to run automated bidding. Well, that's not enough data for the automation to actually work. Or they'll, again, a small ad spend, and they'll switch to broad match keywords, which essentially lets Google target almost anything it wants. Again, with not providing enough conversion data that Google can start to understand what it is that you're offering. So a lot of what we do these days is being like the janitor, cleaning up the mess, and figuring out what strategies, in terms of bidding and in terms of what type of keywords are appropriate in a given situation.
What are some tools you recommend? I know you probably do a lot of research from like a keyword perspective.
Yeah, so with keyword research, specifically, I mean, we use Google's built-in tools. We use SEMrush. Probably the SEMrush is kind of not as important as it used to be because you could use a tool like ChatGPT to do like to scan a website and develop a rough keyword strategy. And I do recommend that for advertisers. But where SEMrush shines, I should say, you can do competitive analysis, right? So you can see what keywords your competitors are targeting. And for an agency that's experienced, where we get value in that is we might not understand all the nuances and different keyword opportunities. So it can identify like some new keyword themes for us that we otherwise might miss. But outside of that, ChatGPT or Gemini, if you're advertising for yourself and you want to pay for a tool, it's a great way to just like scan your competitors' websites to at least get like a starting point for keywords. Even scanning your own website, right? It can give you some ideas for keywords.
Ed, I know, one of the things we were discussing before we hit record was, and everyone's, talking about and thinking about AI
Mhm.
and how is AI affecting, paid search now? And then maybe we could talk about how you think it will affect it.
Yeah, so there's kind of two aspects to AI in Google, and the first one is the search engine itself, right? They've adopted an AI approach, so um, it hasn't negatively impacted paid search at this point because Google has just pushed the organic results lower on the page. Right? So anybody doing SEO is definitely feeling the pinch right now. So it's really unclear longer term, like how many results are going to have links, how relevant those links will be. I expect what will happen is there's going to be fewer paid search results for each query, but those paid search results will be more relevant, so the click-through rates may be higher, right? So we're going to end up paying a higher cost per click, but the clicks that you do get will be more relevant, will hopefully convert more. And we've seen this trend for a long time now, by the way, as Google has gotten better at placing the right ads in front of the right people. So that's one thing. The second thing is the ad platform itself. There's been a large adoption of AI. I mean, Google's been at it for a long time before we even called automation AI, right? In fact, we just changed the name. Um, but Google is adding a lot of these tools in platforms. We talked about Performance Max a little bit, and that's their biggest AI revolution, that it kind of automates much of the campaign management. But they're also using automated creative generation. This is a tool we have not adopted at my agency yet. And not only can it generate the ads for you that you can then review and edit, it will generate new creative in the background if you let it. And it will generate creative on the fly when somebody inputs a query that you will not even be able to see as an advertiser. So that's a little bit more scary because if it's automated creative that's generated in the platform, and you can at least later you can go periodically check to see, oh, this is a really bad headline, and you can stop it from running. But Google's taken it to the level where we don't even know what creative is running. And that's, I mean, in a lot of industries, you just can't do that. Medical devices where there's, regulations. But most advertisers want to have confidence that they know what's being said about their products. So that's a big thing, that it's a hurdle that most advertisers and agencies haven't adopted yet. I think it will get better in time and we will start to adopt it. But yeah, navigating that is a challenge, all of these changes that are coming.
You were mentioning obviously there's mistakes with keywords, mistakes with bidding. What about with creative? What mistakes do people make with the creative side?
Yeah, so too many to mention. Um, there's, just probably the biggest thing we see is advertisers just like saying the same thing over and over again. Part of the reason for that is Google came up with a new creative called responsive search ads a number of years ago. And instead of having like a well-defined ad with, two headlines and one description, now we output three headlines and up to two descriptions. Plus, you can put 25 headlines in an ad, and then Google will mix and match those. So you have to be very thoughtful in your approach. And so what we do see in a lot of accounts that we audit is that the advertiser just puts like the same thing, like their main offer over and over and over and over again, saying it the same way. And when the ad comes up, it's like saying the same thing three times in a row in the ad instead of offering additional features and benefits that may be relevant to your target audience. So that's a big thing, is just like missing those opportunities.
I want to thank you. I have one last question. Before I ask it, I want to point people to check out 10,000footview.com to learn more and check out more episodes of the podcast. Just thanks for sharing your lessons, journey, and a lot of these helpful tips here. My last question is just any particular mentors that you've had throughout your business journey, life journey that would be, and maybe some advice that they've given you?
Yeah, that's a tough one. And my answer, oddly, is going to be no, which I know doesn't make a lot of sense. So there's certainly been people that I have learned from along the way, and kind of followed online. But I haven't ever really had that mentor relationship in my life. And part of that, my father passed away when I was quite young. And I think I've always had the attitude of do for myself. And I know that's a personal failing as well as an ability that I have,
How
where I
young were
don't
you?
easily
I'm sorry
accept
to hear
help on
that.
things. Yeah. But I mean, this is life, right? I mean, the important thing is to understand our own limitations. And I do get that limitation in myself. But yeah, I have trouble asking for help in certain ways. So in business, not so much. Personally, it's a much bigger limitation for me. But to my credit, I mean, I've kind of turned that into a strength that when I need to learn how to do something, I just figure it out for myself.
How young were you?
I was 10.
Wow. Yeah, I guess it turns into a strength over time because you're forced to do it yourself.
Yeah, living on the streets, right? It was nothing like that, but yeah, we all go through different life experiences and challenges, and that definitely develops our character, and how we see and we interact with the world, and so yeah, and I mean, I think again, understanding yourself and your limitations is really important to your own success.
Yeah. So we'll change the question to life experience that changed you, and that was one. Was there a positive? I mean, that's like a negative one that had a positive effect, I guess, but was
Yeah,
there a positive life experience or another life experience that kind of
well,
shaped
like
who you are?
yeah, well, I mean, starting this business has been one of the most positive things in my life because it's something I aspired to from, my early 20s, starting working. I thought this is not for me, right? And I stuck it out for many years. But starting this business, and I think by the middle of the second year, I hit kind of a milestone, a personal milestone that I had to earn the same amount of money I had been earning previously in a full-time job. And when I hit that number, because when I started the business, I thought if I hit this number and I can make that much money until I die, it's enough. That the fact that I can kind of control my own destiny, work when I want to work, that would be a big success. And hitting that was a big thing. And then doubling that up the next year was also, yeah, a big milestone for me.
Love it. Ed, thank you so much. Everyone, check out more episodes of the podcast. Check out 10,000footview.com, and we'll see everyone next time. And thanks, Ed.
Thank you.
What I It resides between my eyes. Walked through the fire, came out better on the other side. See, life's like a beach if you find the sailing right now. I'm feeling like 100 grand.